Thanks very much, everyone. It's been great to come along and speak about the Dragonflies in the Bogs project this morning. And a great to hear some of our target species in that last talk as well by Martin. So that was really interesting. My name is Scott Shanks. I'm the new project officer for a British Dragonfly Society in Scotland and be working on the Dragonflies on the Bogs project, which I shall tell you a little bit now. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a background on the project. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the target species that we're looking at, some of the target sites that we're actually going to be working on over the next 2 years, and then some of the future volunteering opportunities that we've got for the project as well. Okay, so I shall get going. So the idea of this project is, oh, sorry, I've just lost my screen. There it goes. Sorry, it's come back. That's great. Yes, so the aim of this project is to work with land managers and partners, might be NGOs across the northwest of Scotland, to try and restore and enhance peatland biodiversity, improve some habitat resilience against climate change, and increase population connectivity for a number of rare peatland dragonfly species. And this is a project that it has been funded by the Scottish Government's Nature Restoration Fund, which is managed by Nature Scot and is delivered by the British Dragonfly Society. So as I said, it's a 2 year, effectively kind of 18 months kind of sort of now, sort of remaining, which is funded by the British Dragonfly Society, the Nature Restoration Fund. The project has been led so far by Jen Davidson, who's our Scottish Conservation Officer, and he's done an amazing job going around lots and lots of landowners and getting them on board with the project. And I have just started in January this year and quickly trying to get up to speed with the project. So onward. So there's a big issue, as Martin said in that last kind of sort of talk, with a sort of alpine upland, sort of ponds and habitats, but particularly peatlands. Over the last 200 years, about 80% of our peatlands in the UK have either been lost or have suffered some form of degradation. That can be drainage for forestry, it might be drainage for agriculture, quite often peat extraction, it might be development from things like roads and wind farms. Increasingly, there's an issue with trampling with large numbers of kind of sort of deer, but potentially overgrazing can massively impact peatlands as well. Um, Damaged peatlands are obviously a massive source of greenhouse gases, and damaged green peatlands are also pouring lots of carbon into water courses, which lowers lowers the water quality as well. But more importantly for us is that damaged peatlands quite often lose their specialist biodiversity. So the species that you find on these kind of sort of peatland sites are quite specialized, and so damage to the peatlands, you lose those species as well. And this just shows an example of an erosion feature on a degraded blanket bog, which might look quite wet in that photo, but in the middle of summer is particularly dry and with lots of exposed bare peat and a colourful a picture montage of some lovely sphagnum mosses that we can find on a good quality peat bogs. So the impact of climate change is obviously an increasing sort of issue, with a prediction for warmer and drier summers in the future, but also kind of potentially wetter winters. So peatlands are going to be exposed to a much higher risk and incidence of drought and potentially wildfire, as you can see in this photo sort of here, which was taken on a peatland that had been drained for forestry planting in the 1980s, and effectively every 2 or 3 years suffers a massive wildfire. So actually looking at the surface of this peatland, which is quite deep, you find that there's very little sphagnum kind of sit on there. So degraded peatlands, much less resilient to climate extremes and that kind of drought and wildfires. And importantly, dragonfly ponds we're seeing increasingly drying up in summer due to either the degraded peatlands, but also the impact of climate change. So how do we counter that? Is there something that we can do? Well, a rewetting, say peatlands and peatland restoration is one of the keys to restoring peatland habitats, and it is a the skills and a knowledge for actually delivering peatland restoration has massively increased across the UK in the last couple of years. Blocking drainage ditches effectively holds the water on the site, helps stabilize that water levels, and then the sphagnums and the lovely kind of bog vegetation can sort of recolonize. But also, you're holding on to that water for a longer period of time, and species such as black darter and common hawker will very quickly colonize peatland restoration sites. But at the moment, we just don't know particularly about the rarer sort of peatland species that we have in Scotland. The Scottish Government has a target of restoring 250,000 hectares of a degraded peatland by 2030, and I guess we're at a fairly low number of that at the moment. So there's a great incentive to try and do peatland restoration all across sort of Scotland at the moment, potentially with great a potential impact for a dragonfly species and peatland dragonfly species. Part of this project that we're sort of looking at is to see how whether we can adapt some of those peatland restoration techniques to actually a benefit our more specialist peatland species. So one of the trials for this was a project led by the British Dragonfly Society and Stephen Carroran back in 2023. And it was based in the Carrara estate, which is just a tiny little train station. People might know from the film Trainspotting, in the middle of Scotland, and but it's a fantastic location for lots of species such as a azure hawker and a white-faced darter and northern emerald. So back in, but one of the issues that had been seen from lots of kind of a species recording that had been done there is that a lot of the peatland pools and the bog pools that were on the site were drying out increasingly. So in 2023, 27 new bog pools were created on the Carrara estate using a variety of peatland restoration techniques. This might be generally blocking drainage features to hold water during the summer. Some areas were deepened and some pools were extended and expanded as well. So some of the example pools are kind of say given there. Designs were to include shallow areas, but also deep areas that would suit both azure hawker, northern emerald, as well as white-faced darter. That kind of deeper areas they tend to prefer. So very quickly after the work had happened in, I think it was March 2023, surveys in May and September found rapid colonization of our target species, as well as other aquatic invertebrates, which was fantastic and really gave the foundations for this project going ahead. Which is a lovely azure hawker sort of larvae, so just there. So the key target species for this project are azure hawker, white-faced darter, northern emerald, but other species obviously will massively benefit from this project as well, include common hawker and black darter. Both of those species massively declining across Europe in the last Red List review, and also likely to shift categories in the upcoming UK Red Listing as well. So going on to azure hawker. Currently in the 2008 a GB red listing listed as vulnerable. In the most recent IUCN red listing is moved to a near threatened. So this is, in a UK context, it's only found in Scotland, breeding in shallow bog pools and runnels in upland blanket bog with generally lots of aquatic sphagnum such as Sphagnum cuspidatum. Adults generally patrolling around bog pools and upland areas. In Scotland, interestingly, well, in Europe, it tends to be found in very upland, very high montane kind of areas, at high altitude. In Scotland, it can be found effectively at sea level in some of the West Coast colonies. And here's an example there. A next species is northern emerald. So in the last GB red listing review, listed as near threatened, but actually listed as least concern in the European most recent sort of context. In the UK, it's only found in Scotland, breeding again in moorland pools and runnels, often with lots of a little bit of water flow kind of in them, and generally with lots of Sphagnum cuspidatum sort of in there, which is the kind of very feathery aquatic sphagnum that you can find in these peatland sites. Adults generally patrolling around about a sort of pools and open areas, quite often areas with trees and scattered trees where the adults will hunt kind of in the canopy. And there's an example from Tansley Bog, which is one of our project sites. And our final target species is the white-faced darter. So in the last review in 2008, it was listed as endangered, and the most recent European review red listing has it as vulnerable. So this is a species that's mainly found in northwest Scotland, but there are colonies still holding on in the Midlands and in Cumbria. And in fact, in Cumbria, a fantastic reintroduction project has shown some amazing successes as well. This is a species that's breeding in peatland pools, including flooded peatland, peat cutting sites with deep water and much sphagnum. And they will colonize fairly small pools. So, where are we actually going to be doing some of this lovely work? So, we've got a number of sites, 10 project partners across the northwest of Scotland. We have a cluster of sites in Wester Ross. We have a cluster just next to Loch Ness, and we have a cluster in the kind of more central sort of Highlands, around about Glencoe, Rannochmoor, and Carrower. So our Wester Ross cluster, we have on the beautiful Loch Marie, the Benny National Nature Reserve. We have a site there called Tansley Bog. Moving down to Kinloch, we have a fantastic site at Kinloch Woodlands and two potential restoration sites on Glen Shieldig, which is a woodland trust sites. At Carrara, we have three sort of large landowners. So within the Carrara estate, which is pretty extensive, we've got an area that we're sort of working. Again, the Jahama aluminium sort of based estate in just next to Kinloch Leven. There's a small area in there where we're going to do some sort of trial works. And NTS Glencoe, we've identified some sites to do peatland restoration and some bog pool creation as well. Up at Loch Ness, we have a number of landowners that we're hoping to do to identify some key features within their sites this summer and actually move forward on delivering those peatland restoration and this habitat creation this year. That's at Corrimany, which is next to the RSPB Corrimany estate. Bunloit, Dundregan, which is a fantastic location with a big rewilding sort of project ongoing, and the Hilton and Goosachen estate as well. So have a quick look and sort of fly through some of those sites. So this is up at Benay. This is our Tansley Bog, which is an amazing little site. It is within the National Nature Reserve and actually falls within the SAC for the site as well as being a triple SI. The site itself is actually pretty wet already, and we've done some preliminary peat depth survey work in there to try and identify where we'll actually do some additional work. This is at Glen Shieldig, quite a different look. So this is a much more upland site, but it shows evidence of previous peat cutting, but also some serious erosion and trampling issues that are in there. So that's quite a complex site that we're going to have to deal with a number of issues in order to try and make this suitable for species. And this is at Loch Ildimore, which is just next to Kinloch Leven as part of the Yamaha estate. And this is a wonderful location, and we were there earlier this year looking at where we can put in some of these peatland pools. So going on to the Carrara. So this earlier this year, we have had contractors out on site at Carrara, expanding on the work that was done in 2023, and a we've had them out there for 14 days. A generally just one ground a excavator with low ground pressure, a sort of tracks. Over that time, 120, over 120 new bog pools and complexes have been created, which is an amazing increase in the amount of suitable habitat that's going to be in there. And it is such a gorgeous place to be, absolutely amazing. Lots of those pools, lots of the current pools have either been expanded and or a deep retreats have actually been created in them, which will hopefully counter the drying that we're seeing in the summer. So this just shows in blue dots the new pools that have been created this year, and the pink dots are the pools that were created back in 2023. So you can see how much that habitat has been expanded. And each of those dots is not just a single pool; those are complexes of pools at each of those locations. So it's impressive, really impressive stuff that's kind of in there. And this just shows the digger at work making and blocking some of these drainage features and already holding water on some of these pools, which is really fantastic to see. A Kinloch estate, which is on the Wester Ross cluster in the far northwest. Kinloch estate used to be a shooting estate, but was taken over in the 1990s by a family who are now pushing and turning it into a much more rewilding a sort of project. So we're seeing lots of tree planting, but also some peatland restoration as well. The site has Azure Hawker, Northern Emerald, Whiteface Darter, and actually keeled skimmer as well, which is quite unusual for our sites there. Back in 2024, our fantastic volunteer Pat Batty and a Jen Davidson were out and identified, and also Graham Rennie as well, were out identifying locations where we can actually do some of the work on this site. So 4 pools were identified. Who were out doing a peat depth survey earlier this year, and because of the sensitivity of the site and the owners didn't want a big excavators on site, the restoration work has been done by hand, which is an incredibly difficult and messy sort of job for anyone who's done peatland restoration by hand. Not a great thing to, not a fun thing to do. But the guys who were out there did an amazing job, and 3 pools were enhanced, deepened, and a blocked off to hold water during the summer, just earlier this month, which was looking fantastic. So moving forward, we've got obviously quite a lot of other sites to work on in the next year. Benay, the Yamaha estate, NTS Glencoe, and the Woodland Trust sites are key priorities that we'll be looking at taking forward very soon. And hopefully that work would be looking to start in August. As soon as the breeding bird season has finished, we will be out there and trying to get contractors on site. So we've got a number of volunteering opportunities sort of coming up. We've got a weekend at Carrara Estate where we've actually booked out the youth hostel, and we'll be looking for volunteers to actually sort of come along who'd be interested in taking part in some monitoring on the site. We've also got another event at NTS Glencoe planned for August, and we'll be looking at fitting in a few other training events, hopefully too. So anyone interested in coming along and learning a little bit about the surveying for these key species, and also helping with some of the monitoring of the site, please do get in touch. And yeah, as I said, please do get in touch if you're interested in getting monitoring. If you're coming up to Scotland on holiday and generally in the next couple of years, actually getting back and actually some repeat monitoring to see the colonization of some of these new pools, that would be fantastic to do. And I'm going to finish there by saying a huge thank you to Pat Batty, Graham Rennie, and all of our other BDS volunteers who've been collecting species records and detailing their observations on these species, which has allowed this project to go ahead. And thank you also to everyone who's allowed me to use their fantastic photos of the species as well this year. And I shall stop there. Thank you very much.